This is my first video on my channel called Intentional Loss. Loss feels like an apt word given where this challenge finishes. It's a pacifist colony, meaning I can't attack any humans or animals, and it's on Losing is Fun, on Lost Tribe specifically, and we're in a temperate forest. I chose this structure in the middle of the map, which in hindsight was definitely a mistake, but it had a decent structure to start off with. I have 5 colonists that have a real mix of skills, although I avoided anyone with high melee or shooting, given those skills would be completely redundant. To begin with, my focus was on building the base. I wanted to just use this original structure and put everything in here, so kind of the beds, the living, dining room, and production all in one. It was made out of marble, and around this base there were several kind of areas that we could mine from, and also start to grow food as well. Food growing was going to be really important, and that was because obviously if we can't kill any animals, we're gonna have to rely on what we can grow. I also knew that research was going to be really important because on this setting, we started off with no understanding about power or complex furniture, so that was going to be quite difficult. Ultimately, wanted to get to a society where we could have turrets to help protect us, but to begin with, focused on the security we could use, which was traps. So I placed a trap down, and then I placed a wall down as well, so I could have a second trap for the time being, which should help with any initial security or like encounters that we might come across. Usually when you start the game, you get a kind of lone raider rather than multiple, so I thought that that would be acceptable for the time being. Given we had no animals that we could hunt, given it was pacifist, I really didn't do a good job of training, and the reason I didn't do a good job of training my animals was because you needed meat for my creature called, I don't know how you say his name, Kiko. Kiko, yeah, is that how you say it? Yeah, we're going with that, Kiko. And I also had a Yorkshire Terrier and a donkey, and the donkey needs to be in a pen, and that was something I hadn't thought about initially. So I put my grow zone down next to my base on the left. I then decided to put my pen down there too. I then had a panic that my donkey would eat the things that I was growing, so I moved the grow zone to the right, which you'll see in a second. I had thought about taming some other animals that could be useful for security, but didn't have the meat to do that. And often the animals that I thought would be helpful for security posed a risk if we tried to tame them and were unsuccessful. So I just avoided that for the time being. So yeah, here is where I decide on the pen and then the grow zone as well. I decided to do kind of grow rice to begin with. I think that's one of the fastest growing crops. I could be wrong there, but I think rice is faster than potatoes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I also decided to harvest some berries around the base because we were gonna really struggle for food and prioritize complex furniture as an initial research project. We have one of our colonists was quite strong at research. He actually got hit by a trap already. His name is Skilrikos. Don't know how you say the name, but he has, I think he's on 10 or 11 foot intellect, so he would be able to focus on that. My colonists are building the pen, and the donkey can go there too. I've also got a decent amount of herbal medicine, but decided to collect some as well. I can't build a bed at this point because that's actually one of the furniture items that comes under complex furniture. and I decided to focus on having some recreation as well. I asked my colonists to focus on repairing the structure that we did have. I also started thinking that the traps at the front might be slightly difficult because inevitably my animals and my colonists might accidentally hit the trap. So I would decide to build a second door so that they could kind of go through that and avoid the traps. And then my idea was that if there was a raider or a animal that had gone berserk, I would open the door so they went towards the trap, or that was at least the plan. So I've got the bare bones now. The pen is made, the structure's made. We've got beds down and a table because, of course, we don't want to not eat without a table given the bad mood that that gives. My colonists are starting to plant the rice as well, and hopefully the research project is underway too. It was clear that I really needed to harvest some food around me. I had very little food, and um, yeah, basically already having my first mental breakdown for my colonists, which isn't great. And actually, I think um, given that none of the other colonists can be drafted and basically be violent, that's actually a real problem because if someone raids and you've got someone having a sad wander, then obviously they're going to get attacked, which I would find out relatively soon. I wanted to do a bit of a mix of crops, so having some hill roots was going to be important. We wouldn't be able to trade for medicine given the low amount of silver, and I also wanted to grow some cotton so that we could make more of the recreation. So, like a poker table needs cotton, but also thought it would be useful for clothes, especially given if we can't kill animals. Another thing we wouldn't get is leather or any kind of resource to make clothing. Although um, that like making clothing was definitely far in the future and not something I was really thinking about at that time. I do have some mods on this game, but I didn't use them. So I think the largest mod that I have in terms of gameplay is probably the hospitality mod. But yeah, I didn't want to use that, and so I refused visitors until we had guest beds, and obviously never put guest beds down. Um, Baxter was in need of his pen, and I couldn't figure out why it was saying pen needed, and I never really understood why it still was saying pen needed, because it was recognizing it as a pen, but it did kind of sort itself out after a while too. At this point, my colonists are getting really hungry, so you can see it says ravenously hungry. I was playing a bit of a game of harvesting what I could, and I decided that if the animal was already killed, we hadn't committed violence against it. So um, was kind of always on the hunt for any animals that were already dead that we could butcher. Um, I also wanted to start thinking about mining steel because I knew that we were going to get to the point where we would be able to have power, and so wanted the steel ready for that. I also thought maybe uranium would be useful to mine so that we could trade, but um, I think one of the issues here was that that was probably a bit too forward thinking and I needed to focus on survival more. My terrier trap and died. So yeah, that was a learning for me, and thankfully my animal starts killing other animals so it can eat, and I didn't really have to worry about that. And we could also eat the rest of that leftover turtle, which was useful. We were really desperate, as you can tell at this point. But yeah, I think like here, not prioritizing the right thing, so the medicine over the berries is a good example. Shamblers also start to approach, which was nerve-wracking because they were fairly close to the base. Um, I played with the idea of thinking, well, they're entities and not necessarily humans. Decided it wouldn't be true to the challenge to attack them, so I didn't want to. And I tried to make sure that my colonists didn't go near. At this point, people are starting to have mental breaks because of lack of food primarily. So the focus was to harvest the berries around, given my crops weren't there yet, but also to start thinking about what I can do to ensure that they don't have more mental breaks. One of them, I think it's leopard there, had the corpse obsession, so making sure that they then buried them. And it really was a game of trying to make sure that they had enough food just to survive until those rice plants had finally grown in. Um, Also disturbing my other colonists when I'm harvesting at the moment, which wasn't ideal. There was actually already only one shambler left. I'm not sure how the other two died. Um, I was I was kind of looking for the other shambler because um, I was surprised that he died so quickly. And then I thought I would take that shambler and I could butcher them, but realized if I did that, he'd get too close. The colonists would get too close to the other shambler and they would attack. Weirdly, then the second one died, so that was perfect. And I decided to change it to butcher human-like and entity corpses, because we were in desperate need of food. But obviously, we then took the hit, especially for humans, if we butchered them, in terms of mood of my colonists. I wanted to prioritize growing and harvesting at that point, and actually, one of the default settings didn't have um, Camino growing, and despite it being a level 5 and him having an intense passion for it, so I changed that for the time being. Time to name the colony, and I went for pacifiers, and I didn't bother changing the name of where we were.